The smell of fresh paint and sawdust had become so familiar over the past 3 weeks that I barely noticed it anymore as I navigated through the construction chaos of Moretti's. The exclusive club, nestled in the heart of Chicago's Gold Coast, was undergoing a complete transformation under my direction. Vincent Moretti had hired me to modernize the space while maintaining its old-world elegance, a challenge that would have excited me under different circumstances. Now, every decision felt weighted. Every consultation a performance I was barely managing to sustain. My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted the fabric samples spread across the temporary work table in what would eventually become the main lounge. The deep burgundy velvet caught the late afternoon light streaming through the tall windows, and for a moment, I allowed myself to appreciate the beauty of the material. Then my stomach turned, and I had to press my palm against the table's edge to steady myself. Morning sickness was a misnomer, I'd learned. The nausea came in waves throughout the day, unpredictable and relentless. I'd thrown up twice already today, once in the construction site's portable bathroom and once in my car during lunch. The workers probably thought I had a weak stomach for dust and chemicals. If only it were that simple. Miss Chase? Tony, the general contractor, appeared beside me with a clipboard. His weathered face was kind but professional, never crossing the boundary between colleague and friend. We need your approval on the bar fixtures before the end of the day. The supplier's waiting. I nodded, forcing my attention to the sketches he showed me. Chrome or brass? The decision should have been straightforward, but my mind kept wandering to the white plastic stick hidden in my purse. The one I'd taken this morning in a gas station bathroom, unable to wait another moment for confirmation of what my body had been telling me for weeks. 2 pink lines. Undeniable. Terrifying. The brass, I finally said, pointing to the warmer option. It'll complement the burgundy better. Tony made a note and disappeared back into the controlled chaos of the construction site. I pressed my hand against my lower abdomen, the gesture already becoming instinctive. There was nothing to feel yet. No visible sign of the life growing inside me. But I knew, and the knowing was changing everything. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Another text from my sister asking when I'd visit. Another message I'd ignore. How could I face anyone right now? How could I explain that I was pregnant by a man who'd vanished 3 months ago, leaving behind nothing but debts and broken promises? Marco Moretti. Just thinking his name made my chest tighten with a mixture of anger and something dangerously close to grief. He'd swept into my life like a storm, all charm and reckless energy, so different from the careful, controlled men I usually dated. He'd made me laugh, made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in years. And he'd lied about everything. I'd believed him when he said he was a financial consultant. I'd believed him when he said his frequent absences were business trips. I'd believed him when he whispered promises about our future together during those stolen nights in my apartment. What a fool I'd been. The truth had come out slowly. Puzzle pieces I'd been too infatuated to put together. The late-night phone calls he'd take in another room. The cash he always carried, never using credit cards. The way he'd tense whenever someone asked about his family. And then, 3 months ago, he'd kissed me goodbye one morning and never came back. It took me 2 weeks to realize he was truly gone. Another week to discover that Marco Moretti was connected to one of Chicago's most powerful families, and that he'd stolen from them before disappearing. The news had come from an unexpected source, Vincent Moretti himself, who'd appeared at my office with the job offer that I later understood was part investigation, part surveillance. "I'm looking for an interior designer," he'd said, his dark eyes studying me with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "Someone who can bring fresh vision to a classic space. Your portfolio impressed me." I'd been too desperate for the work to question why Vincent Moretti, a man whose club was legendary, whose name carried weight in certain circles, had chosen a relatively unknown designer like me. The generous deposit had helped me catch up on rent. The promise of future referrals had silenced my suspicions. Now, standing in his club with his brother's child growing inside me, I understood. Vincent was watching me, waiting to see if Marco would contact me. I was bait in a trap I hadn't known I was walking into. The thought made me nauseous again, though whether from pregnancy or fear, I couldn't tell. I grabbed my water bottle from my purse and took a long drink, trying to settle my stomach. As I did, I noticed the time. Nearly 6. The crew would be wrapping up soon, and I needed to finalize tomorrow's schedule before leaving. I gathered my things quickly, shoving fabric samples and sketches into my worn leather portfolio. My purse, a vintage find I'd discovered at a thrift store years ago, sat on the chair beside the work table. I'd need to remember to grab it on my way out. But first, I had to check the measurements for the VIP section upstairs. The staircase to the second floor was still under renovation, the temporary railing rough under my palm as I climbed. My feet ached in the flats I'd switched to this week, another small concession to the changes my body was already demanding. The VIP section was quieter, away from the main construction noise, and I paused at the top of the stairs to catch my breath. This floor would house private dining rooms and a members-only lounge. Vincent had been specific about his vision here. Intimate, luxurious, exclusive. I'd proposed rich wood paneling, custom lighting, and furniture that whispered old money rather than shouted new wealth. He'd approved everything with barely a question, which should have pleased me, but instead felt ominous. I moved through the space, checking measurements against my notes, making mental adjustments for the lighting installation scheduled for next week. The sun was setting now, casting long shadows through the uncovered windows. The view of the Chicago skyline was breathtaking from here, the city stretching out in all directions, beautiful and indifferent to the small dramas playing out within its boundaries. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a reminder I'd set for myself. Doctor's appointment tomorrow, 9 a.m. I needed to establish prenatal care, to start making decisions about this pregnancy that I could barely accept as real. Would I keep it? The question haunted me, though deep down I already knew the answer. This child, however unexpected, however complicated its origins, was mine. I would figure it out somehow. The sound of footsteps on the stairs made me turn. Tony appeared, looking apologetic. "Sorry to interrupt, Miss Chase, but we're locking up for the night. You about done up here?" "Almost," I said, tucking my phone away. "Give me 5 minutes?" He nodded and descended back down the stairs. I took one last look at the space, imagining it complete. The soft glow of custom sconces, the rich texture of velvet upholstery, the intimate conversations that would happen in these rooms. Would I still be working here when it opened? Or would the truth about Marco, about this baby, come out before then? I pushed the thought away and headed back downstairs. The main floor was emptying out, workers loading equipment and tools into trucks parked outside. The late September air that rushed in through the open door was crisp, carrying hints of the autumn that was settling over the city. I pulled my cardigan tighter around myself, another futile attempt at protection against more than just the cooling weather. Tony was waiting by the entrance, keys in hand. "All set?" "Yes, thank you." I paused, suddenly remembering. "Actually, I left my portfolio upstairs. Let me grab it real quick." "No problem, I'll wait here." I hurried back through the space, my footsteps echoing in the emptying club. The portfolio was where I'd left it, but as I reached for it, I realized something was missing. My purse. Where had I put it? I retraced my steps, checking the work table, the temporary office space, even the bathroom. Nothing. Had I left it upstairs? I climbed the stairs again, my heart starting to pound with an anxiety that felt disproportionate to a missing purse. But it wasn't just any purse. Inside was my wallet, my keys, my phone charger, and buried at the bottom beneath receipts and lip gloss, the pregnancy test I'd taken this morning. The test I hadn't thrown away because some part of me couldn't let go of that tangible proof yet. The test that had Vincent Moretti's brother's name written all over its implications, even if no one else knew it yet. I searched the VIP section frantically, checking every corner, every surface. It wasn't here. Had someone taken it? No, that didn't make sense. The workers had no reason to steal a worn purse, and besides, most had been downstairs all afternoon. Unless I'd left it somewhere else entirely. The private office. Vincent had asked me to review some design proposals in his office earlier this week. Had I been there today? My mind felt foggy with exhaustion and stress. I couldn't remember. The office was on the second floor, at the end of a hallway that led to the more finished parts of the building. Unlike the rest of the club, this area was already operational, used for business meetings and private consultations. I'd only been inside Vincent's office twice, both times feeling distinctly out of place among the dark wood furniture and leather-bound books that spoke of old power and older secrets. The door was closed, but not locked. I hesitated, my hand on the brass handle. Going in without Vincent present felt like crossing a line, entering territory where I didn't belong. But I needed my purse. I needed that test hidden away again before anyone could see it. I pushed the door open slowly. The office was dim in the fading light, shadows gathering in the corners. And there, on the massive mahogany desk that dominated the room, sat my purse. Relief flooded through me so intensely that I almost laughed. I moved quickly across the plush carpet, reaching for the familiar worn leather. My fingers had just closed around the strap when I heard it, the soft click of the door closing behind me. I spun around, my heart suddenly racing. Vincent Moretti stood with his back against the door, his tall frame blocking the only exit. He wore a dark suit that had probably cost more than my monthly rent. His tie loosened slightly at the collar. His face was shadowed, making it impossible to read his expression, but something in his posture made me take an instinctive step backward. Vivian. His voice was low, controlled. The way he said my name made it sound like both a greeting and an accusation. Looking for something? My purse, I managed, hating how my voice shook slightly. I left it here earlier, I think. He moved away from the door, walking slowly around the desk. The motion was casual, unhurried, but it had the effect of putting him between me and my escape route. Yes, I noticed it this afternoon. I was going to have Tony return it to you, but then I thought perhaps I should do it myself. That's very kind, but not necessary. I clutched the purse against my chest, feeling the weight of its contents like an anchor. I should go. Tony's waiting. I sent Tony home 20 minutes ago. Vincent reached the desk and leaned against it, crossing his arms. The movement pulled his jacket tighter across his broad shoulders. I wanted to talk to you privately. My mouth went dry. About the design? I can make adjustments if you're not satisfied with... Not about the design. He gestured to my purse. About what I found inside your bag when I moved it to the desk. The world tilted sickeningly. My fingers tightened on the worn leather, knuckles going white. You went through my things? The bag fell, he said simply. The contents spilled. I couldn't help but notice something interesting among them. Heat flooded my face, embarrassment and anger warring in my chest. That's private. You had no right. Were you going to tell me? His voice cut through my protest, quiet but sharp. Or were you planning to disappear like he did? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implications I wasn't ready to face. My mind raced, trying to calculate how much he knew, how much he'd guessed, how much danger I was actually in. Because Vincent Moretti wasn't just a club owner. He wasn't just a businessman with questionable associates. He was Marco's brother, and Marco had stolen from him, had betrayed family in a way that people like the Morettis didn't forgive. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. Vincent pushed away from the desk, taking a step closer. "Don't insult my intelligence, Vivian. The test is 3 hours old based on the receipt I saw. You're pregnant with my brother's child. Were you going to tell me?" The directness of it left me nowhere to hide. I wanted to lie, to deny, to run, but my body felt frozen in place. "How did you know it was Marco's?" "Because you don't date." His voice was matter of fact. "I've had people watching you since Marco disappeared. No boyfriends, no one-night stands, no dates. The only man who's been in your apartment in the past 3 months was the cable repair technician. So unless there's an immaculate conception happening here, simple mathematics tells me everything I need to know." The revelation that I'd been under surveillance should have shocked me more than it did. Instead, I felt a strange numbness settling over my fear. "You've been spying on me." "I've been protecting you," he corrected. "Did you think Marco's disappearance happened in a vacuum? He stole from people who don't forgive debts, Vivian. People who might think you know where he went. People who might try to use you to draw him out." "I don't know where he is." The truth came out more forcefully than I'd intended. "He left without a word. I haven't heard from him since." Vincent studied me for a long moment, those dark eyes seeming to catalog every micro-expression, every tell. Finally, he nodded slightly, as if confirming something to himself. "I believe you, but that doesn't change your situation, or the situation of that child." My hand moved instinctively to my abdomen, a protective gesture I couldn't suppress. "This has nothing to do with you. Everything to do with my family has to do with me." He said it simply, like stating a law of physics. "That child you're carrying is a Moretti, my nephew or niece, which means both of you are now my responsibility." The possessiveness in his tone sent a chill through me. "I don't need your responsibility. I'll manage on my own." "Will you?" He tilted his head slightly, the gesture almost sympathetic. "A freelance designer with inconsistent income, living paycheck to paycheck, about to become a single mother. How long before you can't work? How long before the medical bills start piling up? What's your plan, Vivian?" Each question landed like a punch, because I didn't have good answers to any of them. I'd been trying not to think about the logistics, the impossibility of raising a child alone in one of the most expensive cities in the country, but I wouldn't give Vincent the satisfaction of seeing my panic. "I'll figure it out," I said, lifting my chin defiantly. "Women do it all the time." "Yes, they do. But they don't usually have to worry about their child being leverage in a war they didn't know existed." His voice softened slightly, taking on a note that might have been genuine concern. "You don't understand what you've walked into, Vivian. Marco didn't just steal money from me. He stole from partners, people with long memories and no sense of mercy. When they find out about this pregnancy, and they will find out, you become a target. Then I'll leave Chicago." Even as I said it, I knew how naive it sounded. "I'll go somewhere they can't find me." Vincent's laugh was brief and without humor. "There is nowhere they can't find you, not anymore. Information travels fast in our world, and a pregnant designer who used to date Marco Moretti. That's the kind of information people pay for." The reality of his words settled over me like a physical weight. I'd been so focused on the immediate shock of the pregnancy that I hadn't considered the larger implications. Marco's world, the world I'd glimpsed only the edges of, was about to swallow me whole whether I wanted it to or not. "What do you want from me?" I asked quietly, exhaustion suddenly overwhelming my fear. Vincent was silent for a moment, seeming to consider his words carefully. "I want you to let me protect you, both of you. Move into one of my properties, accept a security detail, work on the club from a safe location. In return, I make sure no one touches you or that baby." It sounded reasonable, almost generous. But I'd learned enough about the Moretti world to know that nothing came without strings attached. "And what do you get out of this arrangement?" His smile was slight, acknowledging the validity of my suspicion. "I get to make sure my brother's child is born safely. I get leverage if Marco ever resurfaces. A nephew or niece is powerful motivation for a man to come home. And I get the satisfaction of protecting what's mine to protect." "I'm not yours to protect," I said, but the protest sounded weak even to my own ears. "No," he agreed, "but that child is family, and family is everything." I spent the night in my apartment, Vincent's words echoing in my mind until sleep became impossible. He'd let me leave the club eventually, after extracting a promise that I'd consider his offer and meet him for breakfast the next morning. The way he'd phrased it, not quite a request, not quite a command, had made it clear that refusing wasn't really an option. Now, sitting across from him in a private corner of an upscale cafe in the Loop, I watched as he ordered for both of us without consulting the menu. Eggs Benedict for him, fruit and yogurt for me. The presumption should have annoyed me, but I was too tired to fight about breakfast choices. "You didn't sleep," Vincent observed, his dark eyes taking in what I knew must be obvious signs of exhaustion. "Bad dreams or just thinking too much?" "Both." I took a sip of the herbal tea the waitress had brought, wishing desperately that caffeine was still on my acceptable list. I kept trying to figure out if there's a scenario where I say no to you and actually make it work. "And did you find one?" I met his gaze, surprised by the genuine curiosity in his tone. "No," which I assume was your intention. A slight smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I prefer to think of it as presenting reality in unmistakable terms. I'm not trying to manipulate you, Vivian. I'm trying to keep you alive." The food arrived, interrupting whatever response I might have made. As the waitress retreated, I pushed the fruit around on my plate, my appetite non-existent, despite the breakfast I'd skipped at home. My stomach was still unsettled, the morning sickness that had driven me to take the test in the first place showing no signs of improvement. Vincent noticed, of course. He seemed to notice everything. "The first trimester is the worst," he said quietly. "Or so I'm told. My sister-in-law had a difficult time with her pregnancies." The mention of family caught my attention. "You have a sister-in-law?" Marco never mentioned. I stopped, realizing too late that I'd walked into revealing how little Marco had actually told me about his life. Marco never mentioned a lot of things. Vincent's voice was carefully neutral, but I caught the edge of bitterness beneath it. Including the fact that he had 3 older brothers, 2 sisters, and a nephew he was supposed to help raise after our oldest brother died. The information landed like stones dropping into still water, each fact rippling outward to reveal how thoroughly Marco had lied. He told me he was an only child. Of course he did. Vincent cut into his eggs with precise movements. It made his fictional life easier to maintain. No family obligations, no questions about why he never brought you home for Sunday dinner, no risk of you accidentally discovering who we really were. The casual way he said, "who we really were," made my pulse quicken. I'd spent 3 months trying not to think too deeply about what that phrase meant, what exactly Marco had been involved in. But Vincent was stripping away my willful ignorance with every sentence. "The Moretti family," I said slowly, testing the words. "You're not just businessmen, are you?" Vincent's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes acknowledged the question. "We're many things, some of them legitimate, some of them existing in gray areas that the law prefers not to examine too closely. My grandfather came from Sicily with nothing but ambition and a willingness to do what others wouldn't. He built an empire. We've maintained it." The clinical description of what I suspected was organized crime made me set down my fork, my stomach churning. And Marco? What was his role in this empire? Marco was supposed to handle our investment portfolios, Vincent said. Legitimate money, legitimate business. But Marco had expensive tastes and a gambling problem he thought he could hide from me. When his debts got too large, he started stealing from our accounts to cover them. By the time I noticed, he'd taken $2 million and disappeared. $2 million. The number was so large it felt almost abstract. And you think he'll come back for me? For the baby? I think Marco ran because he knew what I'd do when I found out what he'd done. But family means something, even to him. A child changes the equation. Vincent leaned back in his chair, studying me. The question is whether he'll come back before someone else decides you're valuable enough to take. The implicit threat in those words made me push my plate away entirely. You keep saying people will come after me, but who? Why would anyone care about Marco's pregnant ex-girlfriend? Vincent pulled out his phone, scrolling through something before turning the screen to face me. It was a surveillance photo, grainy but clear enough to show me walking into my apartment building. The timestamp was from yesterday afternoon. This was taken by an associate of the Castellano family, Vincent said. There are primary rivals in certain business sectors. They've been watching you for 2 weeks, ever since they learned about your connection to Marco. My hands began to shake. How do you know they took this? Because the man who took it tried to sell it to me, thinking I'd pay for confirmation that Marco had a weak point I didn't know about. Vincent's voice hardened. I paid him, then made sure he understood that sharing that information with anyone else would be the last mistake he ever made. But there are others watching, Vivian. Others who won't be so easily bought off. I stared at the photo, at my own unsuspecting figure captured without my knowledge. How many other photos existed? How many people were watching me right now? Cataloging my movements? Waiting for an opportunity I couldn't even identify? What do the Castellanos want? My voice came out smaller than I intended. Leverage against me, information about Marco's whereabouts, or simply to hurt my family by eliminating a potential heir. Vincent took the phone back, his expression grim. Tomas Castellano lost his son in a dispute with my brother Michael 2 years ago. He'd see a certain poetry in taking Marco's child before it's even born. The casual discussion of my unborn child's murder made bile rise in my throat. I stood abruptly, needing air, needing space, needing anything but this conversation that was painting my future in increasingly horrifying shades. Vincent was beside me instantly, his hand steadying me with surprising gentleness. Breathe, Vivian, slowly. In through your nose, out through your mouth. I followed his instructions automatically, the panic attack I'd felt building starting to recede. We stood like that for several moments, his hand warm on my elbow, his presence solid beside me while the cafe continued its morning routine around us, blissfully unaware of the nightmare being discussed at our corner table. I need some air, I managed eventually. There's a car outside. We can drive, talk somewhere more private. He guided me toward the exit, his body positioned slightly in front of mine in a way that I realized was protective. He was scanning the street, checking for threats I couldn't identify, already playing the role of guardian whether I'd agreed to it or not. The black SUV waiting at the curb had tinted windows, and a driver who nodded respectfully as Vincent opened the back door for me. I slid inside, the leather seats butter soft beneath me, the interior smelling of expensive cologne and something else. Gun oil, I realized with a start, noticing the barely concealed weapon the driver wore. Vincent entered from the other side, and the driver pulled smoothly into traffic without being told a destination. We drove in silence for several blocks, heading north toward the Gold Coast, before Vincent spoke again. I know this is overwhelming. I know you're scared. But I need you to understand something, Vivian. I'm not your enemy. I'm not trying to control your life or take your child. I'm trying to make sure you both survive long enough to have a life. Why? The question burst out before I could stop it. Why do you care? Marco betrayed you, stole from you. I'm just the stupid woman who fell for his lies. Why not let the Castellanos have me and be done with it? Vincent turned to look at me fully, and something in his expression made my breath catch. Because that child you're carrying is innocent of Marco's sins. Because you didn't know what you were getting into when you got involved with my brother. And because... He stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. Because I don't let innocent people get hurt when I have the power to prevent it. It's one of the few moral lines I still have. The admission surprised me with its honesty. But you'll hurt guilty people. Without hesitation. There was no apology in his voice. The world I live in doesn't allow for mercy to those who betray trust. But you haven't betrayed me, Vivian. You're just caught in the crossfire of Marco's choices. The SUV was climbing into increasingly affluent neighborhoods now, the buildings growing taller and more impressive. Where are we going? One of my properties. I want to show you where you'd be living if you agree to my protection. Vincent checked his phone, frowning at whatever message he saw there. We have a situation developing. The Castellanos made a move this morning that suggests they're getting impatient. Fear spiked through me. What kind of move? They approached your building manager, asking questions about your lease, your routine, who visits you. He's on my payroll, so he told them nothing useful. But the fact that they're being this aggressive means they're planning something soon. The casual mention that my building manager worked for Vincent should have shocked me more than it did. How many people work for you? Enough. He returned his attention to me. Which is why I need you to make a decision today, Vivian. I can't protect you properly if you're living in an unsecured location, going to work at public job sites, following predictable patterns. You need to disappear into security. Let me create a protective bubble around you until the situation resolves. And when does it resolve? When Marco comes back. When someone dies. When the baby is born. The questions tumbled out, each one highlighting how little control I had over any of this. When I've neutralized the threats against you, when the Castellanos understand that touching you means starting a war they can't win. When Marco either surfaces or is declared permanently gone. Vincent's voice was steady, laying out facts rather than making promises. I can't give you a timeline, but I can give you safety. That's the best I can offer. The SUV pulled up to a glass and steel tower that screamed wealth and exclusivity. A doorman in a crisp uniform opened my door before I could process that we'd arrived. Vincent guided me through a lobby that looked like an art gallery, all marble and modern sculptures, to a private elevator that required a key card to operate. We rose in silence, my ears popping as we climbed higher and higher. When the doors finally opened, they revealed not a hallway, but the interior of a penthouse apartment that took up the entire floor. "This is yours?" I asked, stepping into a space that was easily 4 times the size of my entire apartment building. "One of my properties. I have several throughout the city." Vincent moved past me, gesturing around the open-plan living space. 3 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, full kitchen, office space, private gym. The building has 24-hour security, controlled access, and every resident is vetted. You'd be safe here. I walked slowly through the space, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered panoramic views of Lake Michigan, the designer furniture that probably cost more than my annual income, the kitchen with appliances I'd only seen in magazines. It was beautiful, perfect, and completely wrong for me. "I can't live here," I said, turning back to Vincent. "This isn't me. I'm a thrift store and IKEA furniture person. I don't belong in a place like this. You belong wherever you're safe." Vincent opened what appeared to be a closet, but revealed a sophisticated security panel. Bulletproof windows, reinforced door, panic room behind the master bedroom, direct line to my personal security team. This isn't about comfort, Vivian. It's about survival. The bluntness of it made me sink onto one of the pristine white couches, my hands automatically moving to my still flat stomach. This can't be my life. I'm supposed to be a designer, not someone who needs panic rooms and security teams. Vincent sat in the chair across from me, his posture relaxed, but his eyes alert. I understand this isn't what you planned, but plans change. The moment Marco got you pregnant, your life changed whether you knew it or not. I'm just trying to make sure that change doesn't end in tragedy. And what do you get out of this? I asked again, because his answer in the club hadn't fully satisfied me. Really? Beyond family obligation and moral lines? He was quiet for a long moment, seeming to weigh his response. Peace of mind, the knowledge that I did right by an innocent woman and child, and... He paused, his expression difficult to read. And perhaps the chance to be the kind of man my father thought I could be before this life hardened me into what I am now. The unexpected vulnerability in his admission made me see him differently for a moment. Not as Vincent Moretti, the dangerous man with connections to organized crime, but as someone carrying his own burdens, trying to find redemption in protecting others. I need to think about this, I said, though we both knew I was stalling. I need to process everything you've told me. You have until tonight. Vincent stood, checking his phone again. After that, I'm moving you whether you agree or not. I won't let you die because you're too stubborn to accept help. The return of his authoritative tone should have angered me, but instead, I felt a strange relief. He was making the decision for me, taking away the impossible weight of choosing between my independence and my survival. One condition, I heard myself say. I want to finish the club design. I want to keep working, even if it's from here. I need that purpose, that normalcy. Vincent nodded immediately. Done. I'll have your equipment moved here, set up the second bedroom as your office. You can work remotely, video conference with contractors. The project continues. And when the baby comes? The question slipped out before I could stop it. What happens then? His expression softened almost imperceptibly. Then we figure it out together. You're not alone in this anymore, Vivian. For better or worse, you're family now. And I protect my family. The declaration should have felt like a threat, a chain binding me to the Moretti world. Instead, standing in this beautiful prison overlooking the city, feeling the weight of too many fears and too few options, it felt almost like salvation. Okay, I whispered. I'll move in. I'll let you protect us. Vincent's smile was brief, but genuine. Good. I'll have your things packed and moved by this evening. For now, you should rest. You look exhausted. He guided me to one of the bedrooms, the one he'd designated as mine, already somehow stocked with clothes in my size. I wanted to ask how he'd known, how he'd prepared all this so quickly, but I was too tired to care about the answers. As I sank onto the impossibly comfortable bed, Vincent paused in the doorway. Vivian, thank you for trusting me. I know it's not easy. I don't trust you, I admitted, but I don't have anyone else. He nodded as if that was exactly the answer he'd expected. Trust will come, or it won't. Either way, you're safe now. That's what matters. The door closed softly behind him, leaving me alone in my gilded cage with nothing but my thoughts and the growing reality of the child inside me. A child who'd just become the center of a world I was only beginning to understand. A world of loyalty and betrayal, protection and violence, family ties that bound tighter than chains. I placed my hand over my abdomen, whispering to the tiny life within. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you're being born into this. But even as I said it, I knew that Vincent was right. This was our reality now. And survival meant accepting protection from a man I barely knew, in a world I didn't understand, all because I'd fallen in love with the wrong Moretti brother. The first 2 weeks in Vincent's penthouse passed in a strange blur of luxury and imprisonment. My belongings had been moved while I slept that first afternoon. Boxes neatly stacked in my designated bedroom. My clothes transferred to the massive walk-in closet. My design equipment set up in what was now my office. The efficiency with which Vincent's people had dismantled my old life should have terrified me more than it did. Instead, I found myself settling into a routine that felt almost normal, if I didn't think too hard about the armed guards in the lobby or the panic button installed beside my bed. I worked on the club design in the mornings, video conferencing with contractors and suppliers from the sleek office Vincent had created. In the afternoons, I attended doctor's appointments, accompanied by a silent bodyguard named Marcus, who waited outside while I got ultrasounds and listened to lectures about prenatal vitamins. Vincent himself was a constant but distant presence. He'd arrive home most evenings around 7, always impeccably dressed, always carrying that air of controlled power that made people instinctively step aside. We'd share dinner, meals prepared by a private chef and delivered daily, and make stilted conversation about neutral topics. The club, the weather, books we'd read. Anything but the complicated reality of our situation. But tonight was different. Tonight Vincent had come home early, his expression darker than I'd ever seen it. He'd disappeared into his study without a word, and I'd heard him on the phone speaking rapid Italian, his voice sharp with an anger he usually kept so carefully controlled. Now, sitting at the dining table picking at my meal, I couldn't ignore the tension radiating from behind that closed door. Something had happened. Something bad enough to crack Vincent's usual composure. The study door finally opened, and Vincent emerged looking exhausted in a way that went beyond mere physical fatigue. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with a tattoo I'd never noticed before. Italian script running along his inner wrist. "I'm sorry," he said, sinking into the chair across from me. "That couldn't wait." "Is everything okay?" I asked, then immediately felt foolish. Of course everything wasn't okay. We were living in a penthouse fortress because people wanted to hurt me and my unborn child. Vincent poured himself a generous measure of whiskey from the bottle that lived on the sideboard, downing half of it before answering. The Castellanos made another move, more aggressive this time. My fork clattered against my plate. "What kind of move?" "They approached your sister." He said it flatly, watching for my reaction. "Showed up at her house this morning, asking questions about you, where you'd gone, if you'd mentioned Marco, if you'd told her anything about being pregnant." The blood drained from my face. "Rachel? They went to Rachel's house? She has kids, Vincent. My nephews are fine," he interrupted firmly. "I had security on her before they arrived. The Castellanos made their pitch. She told them nothing, because she genuinely knows nothing, and they left. My people made sure they understood that your family is off limits." The protective gesture should have comforted me, but instead, it illuminated just how deep Vincent's surveillance went. "You've been watching my sister?" "I've been watching everyone connected to you. Your sister, your friends, your former colleagues, anyone the Castellanos might use to get information." He took another drink, his expression grim. "That's how this works, Vivian. I find the vulnerabilities before our enemies can exploit them." I pushed my plate away, appetite gone completely. "I need to call Rachel. Warn her." "No." Vincent's voice was gentle but absolute. "The less contact you have with your old life, the safer everyone is. Rachel thinks you took a sudden job opportunity out of state. Your friends think you're on an extended work trip. That's the story, and it needs to stay consistent." "You're asking me to ghost my entire life." The reality of it hit me harder than it had before. Just disappear without explanation? "I'm asking you to stay alive." He leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. "Every phone call is a potential trace. Every email is metadata that can be tracked. The Castellanos have resources, Vivian. They have people in telecommunications, in law enforcement, in places you'd never suspect. One careless contact could lead them right to you. The paranoia inherent in his worldview made me want to scream, but I couldn't deny the logic. How long? How long do I have to live like this? Until Marco surfaces or until I've negotiated a permanent truce with the Castellanos? Vincent set his glass down carefully. There's a third option, but you won't like it. Tell me anyway. He hesitated, then spoke with obvious reluctance. I could let it be known that the child isn't Marco's, that you were with someone else before him, that the pregnancy is unrelated to my family. It would remove your value as leverage. The suggestion made my throat tighten. You want me to publicly claim my baby isn't Marco's? I said you wouldn't like it. Vincent ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I'd learned meant he was more stressed than he wanted to admit. But it would protect you. Without the connection to Marco, to me, you become irrelevant to the Castellanos. And to you? The question came out sharper than I intended. Would I become irrelevant to you too? His eyes met mine, something unreadable in their depths. No, but your life would become your own again. You could leave this apartment, return to your work, raise your child without armed guards and panic rooms. The offer was tempting, frighteningly so. To be free of this golden prison, to reclaim my independence, to give my child a normal life away from the violence that seemed to permeate Vincent's world. But it would mean publicly lying about my baby's paternity, denying Marco's child the Moretti name, cutting myself off from the only protection I had. I need to think about it, I said, standing on shaky legs. I need to be alone for a while. Vincent nodded, not trying to stop me as I retreated to my bedroom. But once inside, I found I couldn't settle, couldn't think, couldn't process the impossible choice he'd laid before me. I paced the spacious room, my hand unconsciously moving to my abdomen where the baby was finally starting to show. A small bump that I'd been hiding under loose clothing. A knock at my door interrupted my spiraling thoughts. Come in, I called, expecting Vincent. Instead, Marcus entered, his usual stoic expression slightly uncomfortable. Miss Chase, Mr. Moretti asked me to give you this. He handed me a thick manila envelope. He said you should look at it before making any decisions. I took the envelope, confused. What is it? I don't know, ma'am. He just said it was important. Marcus nodded respectfully and left, closing the door behind him. I sat on the edge of the bed, turning the envelope over in my hands before finally opening it. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, surveillance images printed on glossy paper. My hands trembled as I sorted through them, understanding dawning with each new picture. They were all of me leaving my old apartment building, me walking into the cafe where I'd met Vincent that first morning, me entering the club for work, me in a doctor's waiting room, me grocery shopping, getting gas, existing in the world while completely unaware I was being watched. But these weren't Vincent's surveillance photos. These were different, grainier, taken from different angles, marked with timestamps from various agencies and organizations. At the bottom of the stack was a printed note in Vincent's handwriting. These are all the photos of you that have circulated in the last month. 3 from the Castellanos, 2 from a private investigator I haven't identified yet, 4 from a journalist investigating my family. This is what your life looks like from the outside. This is why you can't go back. I spread the photos across my bed, a mosaic of my unwitting surveillance, and felt the walls of my cage solidify around me. Vincent was right. I couldn't go back. Even if I denied the baby's paternity, even if I tried to disappear, I was already marked, already cataloged, already a target in a game I was only beginning to understand. A soft knock came again, and this time it was Vincent, his expression carefully neutral as he took in my tear-stained face and the photos spread around me. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I didn't want to scare you. I wanted you to understand the scope of the situation. Mission accomplished, I managed, my voice thick. I understand. I'm trapped. You're protected, he corrected, moving to sit in the chair by the window. There's a difference. Is there? I gestured at the photos. I'm being watched constantly. By you. By your enemies. By people I don't even know exist. How is that different from being trapped? Vincent was quiet for a long moment, seeming to choose his words carefully. Because I'm giving you a choice, Vivian. Stay here under my protection and own your connection to Marco, to this family. Or I help you disappear completely. New identity, new city, financial support to start over somewhere the Castellanos will never find you. You and the baby, free from all of this. The offer stunned me. You'd let me go? Just like that? Just like that. His voice was steady, sincere. I'd make sure you were safe, set up somewhere stable, given enough money to raise the child comfortably. You'd be free of the Moretti world entirely. It was everything I thought I wanted. Freedom, safety, a chance to raise my child away from violence and surveillance and impossible moral compromises. But something in Vincent's eyes told me the offer cost him more than he was admitting. Why would you do that? I asked. You said family was everything. Why let me take your nephew or niece away? His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Because keeping you here against your will would make me no better than the men I'm protecting you from. I won't be your jailer, Vivian. If you want to leave, I'll help you leave properly. I looked down at the photos again, at my own face captured in dozens of unguarded moments. And Marco? What happens if he comes back looking for me? I tell him you wanted nothing to do with him or his world, that you chose safety over family loyalty. He'd understand. Vincent's voice went cold. Marco always put his own interests first. He'd respect you doing the same. The contempt in his tone when he spoke of his brother sparked my curiosity. What happened between you two? Before the money? Before he ran? What made him betray you? Vincent stood, walking to the window to stare out at the glittering city below. For a long moment, I thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, his voice low and rough with old pain. Marco was the baby of the family. My parents spoiled him, protected him from the realities of what we were, what we did. They wanted him to be different, to be legitimate, to have a normal life. So while the rest of us learned the family business, Marco went to private schools, got degrees, lived like the son of a successful businessman instead of... He broke off, his shoulders tense. Instead of what we actually are. Which is? I pressed gently, sensing he needed to say it. The American branch of a Sicilian crime family that's existed for 100 years. My great-grandfather came here with nothing. Built an empire through violence and intimidation, and deals that made devils look honest. We've legitimized some of it over the generations, real estate, restaurants, investments. But the foundation is still the same. Blood and money and loyalty enforced through fear. The clinical honesty of it should have terrified me, but instead, I felt a strange gratitude that he was finally being completely truthful. And Marco couldn't handle that reality? Marco refused to see it. He kept believing our father's stories about us being businessmen, kept ignoring the evidence that we were something else entirely. And when he finally did understand, when reality crashed through his delusions after our brother died, Vincent's voice caught slightly. He couldn't reconcile what we were with who he wanted to be. So he started stealing, started gambling, started making stupid decisions that put everything at risk. What happened to your brother? I asked quietly. The one who died? Vincent turned from the window, his face shadowed in the dim light. Michael was killed in a dispute with a Russian syndicate over territory. The Castellanos saw it as weakness, saw an opportunity to move in on our operations. We've been at war with them ever since. He paused, his expression hardening. Marco was supposed to take Michael's place in the family structure. Instead, he stole from us and ran. The layers of betrayal and grief in Vincent's history made my own problems feel almost small by comparison. I'm sorry. About Michael. Don't be. His voice was flat. This is the life we chose. Death is always a possibility. Michael knew that. We all do. I gathered the photos, stacking them back into the envelope with shaking hands. The offer to disappear, to start over somewhere new. Is it real? Or were you just testing me? Vincent moved closer, stopping just at the edge of my personal space. It's real. I'll have everything arranged by tomorrow if that's what you decide. New identity, bank account, a house in whatever city you choose. You'd be free of all this. But, I heard the unspoken word in his tone. His dark eyes met mine, intense and unreadable. But you should know that if you stay, if you choose this life, I'll protect you with everything I have, not just as a family obligation. Not just because it's the right thing to do, but because... He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. Because you matter, Vivian. You and that child. More than I expected. The confession hung between us, loaded with implications I wasn't ready to examine. My heart raced as I realized the offer wasn't just about my freedom. It was about whether I could accept being part of Vincent's world, with all its darkness and danger and impossible complications. I need time, I whispered, to think about everything. You have until morning. Vincent's voice was gentle despite the deadline. After that, I need to know which path we're taking. The Castellanos won't wait forever, and every day you're here is a day they're planning their next move. He left without waiting for a response, closing the door softly behind him. I sank onto the bed, surrounded by evidence of my surveillance, carrying a child I'd never planned for, caught between freedom and protection, between a normal life and whatever twisted version of family the Morettis represented. My hand moved to my abdomen, feeling the small bump that had become my constant reminder of the stakes involved. What do I do? I whispered to the baby who couldn't answer. How do I choose between being trapped and being safe? But even as I asked the question, I knew the answer was already forming. I thought about Rachel's face when the Castellanos had shown up at her door, about my nephews who might become collateral damage in a war I'd stumbled into. I thought about Vincent's offer to help me disappear, to give me freedom at the cost of cutting all ties to my old life, to my family, to everything familiar. And I thought about the man who'd just confessed that I mattered to him. A dangerous man, yes, but one who'd been nothing but honest about the darkness, while somehow making me feel safer than I had in months. The choice, when it came down to it, wasn't really a choice at all. I couldn't run. I couldn't hide. I could only move forward into whatever future this child had made inevitable from the moment of conception. I picked up my phone, typing out a message to Vincent before I could second-guess myself. I'm staying, not because I don't have options, but because running means spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering if they've found me. At least here, I know who my enemies are. His response came immediately. Thank you for trusting me. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start planning for the long term. I lay back on the bed, one hand on my growing belly, and closed my eyes. Tomorrow would bring new complications, new dangers, new impossible situations to navigate. But tonight, for the first time since Marco had disappeared, I felt something other than fear. I felt like I'd made a choice, rather than having one forced upon me. And in Vincent's world of obligation and violence and family loyalty, that small measure of agency felt like power. The ultrasound gel was cold against my skin, making me flinch as Dr. Sarah Chen moved the wand across my abdomen with practiced efficiency. Vincent stood at my shoulder, his presence solid and somehow reassuring in the sterile examination room. This was our third appointment together, and the initial awkwardness of having him witness something so intimate had faded into a strange comfort. "There's the heartbeat," Dr. Chen said, adjusting the monitor so we could both see the rapid flutter on the screen. Strong and steady at 155 beats per minute. Everything looks perfect for 16 weeks. I stared at the grainy black and white image, trying to reconcile the tiny form on the screen with the reality growing inside me. The baby looked more human now, less alien than in the earlier scans. I could make out the curve of the spine, the delicate bones of the hand pressed against what Dr. Chen identified as the face. "Would you like to know the sex?" Dr. Chen asked, glancing between us with a slight smile. "Baby's cooperating today." I looked up at Vincent, surprised to see genuine emotion softening his usually controlled expression. "Your choice," he said quietly. "I'm here to support whatever you decide." The easiness of it, the way he'd stepped so naturally into this role without overstepping, made my throat tighten. "I want to know." Dr. Chen moved the wand slightly, pointing to a small detail on the screen. "Congratulations. You're having a girl." A girl. My daughter. The information settled into my chest with a weight that felt both terrifying and wonderful. I'd been careful not to think too much about the baby as a real person, keeping it abstract to protect myself from the overwhelming nature of single parenthood in impossible circumstances. But now, knowing she was a daughter, knowing she was healthy and growing inside me, made everything feel suddenly, intensely real. I glanced at Vincent and was startled to see moisture in his eyes, quickly blinked away. "A niece," he said, his voice rough. "Marco's daughter." The mention of Marco broke through my emotional haze, reminding me of all the complications surrounding this pregnancy. Yes, his daughter. Dr. Chen, oblivious to the tension, printed out several pictures of the ultrasound and handed them to us with instructions about my next appointment. As we left the office, Marcus fell into step behind us, a silent shadow that had become as familiar as my own reflection. Vincent was quiet during the elevator ride down to the parking garage, his expression distant. I watched him covertly, trying to read what was going through his mind. Since my decision to stay 3 weeks ago, something had shifted between us, a growing ease that felt dangerous in its intimacy. "Are you okay?" I asked as we reached the SUV. He helped me into the back seat before answering. "I'm thinking about my sister. When she was pregnant with my nephew, she'd bring ultrasound photos to Sunday dinner and make everyone guess whether it was a boy or girl." A sad smile crossed his face. "She was convinced it was going to be a girl. She'd already picked out names, bought pink clothes, decorated the nursery. Then Antonio was born, and she had to return everything. The glimpse into his family life, into the normalcy that existed alongside the violence, made me see him differently." "Do you see them often? Your sister and nephew?" "Not as much as I should." Vincent slid into the seat beside me as Marcus started the engine. Keeping distance protects them from the messier parts of my life, but Antonio just turned 4. I should be there more. An idea formed before I could fully consider it. "Bring them to dinner, tonight, at the penthouse. I'd like to meet them." Vincent looked at me in surprise. "You'd want that? It would be complicated. Questions about who you are, why you're living with me." "Tell them the truth, that I'm Marco's ex-girlfriend, pregnant with his child, and you're protecting us. If they're family, they deserve to know." I met his gaze steadily. "Besides, if I'm staying in this world, I should probably start meeting the people in it." He considered for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll call Gina. If she agrees, I'll have dinner delivered for 6. His phone was already out, scrolling through contacts. She's going to have questions. I'd expect nothing less. The call was brief, conducted in Italian, but I caught the surprise in Vincent's voice and the warmth that crept in as he spoke. When he ended the call, he was almost smiling. "She'll be here at 6:30. She's bringing Antonio and her husband, Sal. Fair warning, Gina is going to interrogate you." "Good," I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. I want to know more about this family I've stumbled into. The rest of the day passed in a blur of nervous preparation. I changed outfits 3 times, finally settling on a simple blue dress that accommodated my growing bump without advertising it. Vincent had the penthouse cleaned to an even higher standard than usual, and arranged for dinner to be delivered from an Italian restaurant that I gathered was family-owned. By the time the doorbell rang at exactly 6:30, my heart was racing with an anxiety that had nothing to do with physical danger, and everything to do with meeting people whose opinions suddenly mattered far too much. Vincent opened the door to reveal a petite woman with the same dark eyes and olive complexion as him, her face lighting up as she pulled him into a fierce hug. "Fratello," she said, kissing both his cheeks. "It's been too long." "I know. I'm sorry." Vincent returned the embrace with obvious affection before stepping back. "Gina, this is Vivian Chase. Vivian, my sister Regina, though everyone calls her Gina." Gina turned to me, her assessment quick, but not unkind. "So you're the one my baby brother got pregnant." She said it matter-of-factly, moving forward to take my hands in hers. "He was always the charming one. I'm sorry he left you to deal with this alone." The directness caught me off guard, but I appreciated it. "Thank you. It's been complicated." "Everything with the Morettis is complicated." She squeezed my hands once before releasing them. "But Vincent says you're family now, which means we take care of you. Both of you." Her gaze dropped meaningfully to my abdomen. A man entered behind her, carrying a small boy who had Vincent's eyes and Gina's delicate features. "Sal D'Angelo." He introduced himself with a warm smile, extending his free hand. "And this shy one is Antonio." Antonio buried his face in his father's shoulder, peeking out at me and Vincent with obvious curiosity. "Is that Uncle Vince?" he asked in a stage whisper. "It is," Vincent confirmed, moving closer. "And this is my friend Vivian. Can you say hello?" Antonio studied me seriously before offering a small wave. "Hi. Are you going to live here forever?" The question, so innocent and direct, made the adults laugh nervously. "For a while," I answered honestly. "Your Uncle Vincent is helping me with something important." "Is it a secret?" Antonio's eyes lit up with interest. "I'm good at secrets. Mommy says so." "Sort of a secret," Vincent said, taking his nephew from Sal and settling him on his hip with easy familiarity. "But I'll tell you about it later, okay? For now, how about we eat? I got your favorite." "Spaghetti?" Antonio's excitement was immediate and infectious. As we moved toward the dining table, Gina fell into step beside me. "Vincent told me about the baby, about the situation with the Castellanos." Her voice was low, meant only for me. "I want you to know that what he's doing for you, protecting you like this, it's not just duty. Vincent doesn't bring people into his home. He doesn't let them see this side of him." She gestured around the penthouse. "The fact that you're here tells me he cares more than he's probably admitting." The observation made my heart skip uncomfortably. "He's been very kind, more than I deserved after—" I stopped, unsure how to phrase Marco's betrayal to his sister. "After Marco stole from us and disappeared?" Gina's expression hardened slightly. "Don't apologize for Marco's choices, Vivian. We've all been cleaning up his messes for years. At least this time something good might come from it." She touched my arm gently. "A bambina, a little girl to spoil. God knows Antonio needs a cousin to terrorize." Dinner was surprisingly relaxed, despite the weight of unspoken truths hanging over us. Antonio dominated the conversation with stories about his preschool, his upcoming birthday party, and his elaborate plans to become a superhero when he grew up. Sal was quiet, but warm, clearly devoted to his wife and son. And Gina played the role of matriarch with ease, ensuring everyone ate, laughed, and felt included. Vincent, I noticed, was different around his family. The hard edges that defined him in business softened. He smiled more easily, laughed at Antonio's jokes, engaged in the gentle teasing that marked close relationships. Watching him like this, I could almost forget the violence he was capable of, the dangerous world he navigated daily. After dinner, while Sal helped Antonio build an elaborate block tower in the living room, Gina cornered me in the kitchen with a glass of wine for herself and sparkling water for me. "So," she said, settling onto a bar stool, "how far along are you?" 16 weeks. I found out I was having a girl this morning. Her face lit up. "A girl? Oh, Vivian, that's wonderful. Antonio will be thrilled to have a cousin he can actually play with." She paused, her expression turning more serious. "Have you thought about names?" I shook my head. "It's still so surreal. I keep thinking I'll wake up and none of this will be real." "But you want her." It wasn't a question. The baby, despite everything. "Yes," I admitted. "I didn't plan this. I didn't want to be a single mother, but she's mine, and I'll do whatever it takes to keep her safe." Gina nodded approvingly. "Good. That's what matters. The rest..." She waved a hand dismissively. "The rest is just logistics. You have family now, whether you expected it or not. Vincent will make sure you and the baby have everything you need." "But why?" The question burst out before I could stop it. "Why is he doing this? I understand family obligation, but this feels like more than duty." Gina took a sip of her wine, considering her answer carefully. "Has Vincent told you about Michael? Our oldest brother?" "Only that he died, that it started the war with the Castellanos." "Michael's death destroyed Vincent," Gina said quietly. "They were close, more like twins than brothers despite the age difference. Vincent blamed himself for not being there, for not protecting him. He's carried that guilt every day for 2 years." She met my eyes. "When Marco disappeared, when Vincent realized another brother had betrayed the family, I think something broke in him. He couldn't save Michael. He couldn't control Marco. But he can save you and that baby. He can do right by this one thing when so much else has gone wrong." The explanation made terrible sense. "So I'm his redemption project?" "No." Gina's voice was firm. "Your family, which means you're everything. Vincent would die for family. He's proved it before. The fact that you're carrying Marco's child would be enough for him to protect you with his life. But..." She hesitated, then continued. "But I see how he looks at you, Vivian. That's not just duty in his eyes." Before I could process that disturbing observation, Antonio's voice called from the living room. "Uncle Vince, it fell down! Can you help fix it?" Vincent appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Duty calls. You two plotting against me?" "Always," Gina said lightly, but her eyes held a knowing look that made me uncomfortable. "We should probably get Antonio home. It's past his bedtime." The goodbyes were warm, with promises to do this again soon. Antonio hugged both me and Vincent, making us promise to come to his birthday party next month. Gina pulled me aside at the door, pressing a piece of paper into my hand. "My number," she said. "Call me if you need anything. Girl talk, advice, or just someone to vent to about how impossible Moretti men can be." She smiled. "Welcome to the family, Vivian. We're crazy, but we protect our own." After they left, the penthouse felt suddenly too quiet. Vincent was cleaning up the remnants of dinner, moving through the space with practiced efficiency. I joined him, carrying plates to the kitchen despite his protest that I should rest. "Your family is wonderful," I said, rinsing a glass. "Thank you for letting me meet them. They loved you." Vincent loaded the dishwasher with careful precision. "Gina's already planning your baby shower, I'm sure." The domesticity of the moment, standing side by side in a kitchen, cleaning up after a family dinner, felt dangerously normal. I found myself relaxing into it, letting the warmth of the evening soften the constant anxiety I'd been carrying. "Can I ask you something?" I said, drying my hands on a towel. "About Marco." Vincent's shoulders tensed slightly, but he nodded. "Of course." "Did he ever talk about me? Before he disappeared? Did he mention wanting to have a family, to settle down? Or was I just—" I struggled with the words. Was I just another one of his lies? Vincent turned to face me fully, leaning against the counter. "I never met you. Marco kept you separate from everything, which should have been my first warning that something was wrong. Men in our world don't hide their women unless there's a reason." He paused, his expression thoughtful. "But I saw the surveillance photos after he disappeared. The way he looked at you in those pictures, that wasn't faked. Whatever else Marco lied about, I think his feelings for you were real." The reassurance should have comforted me, but instead, it made everything more confusing. Then why did he leave? Because Marco has always run when things get difficult. When the reality of our life collided with his fantasy of who he wanted to be, he couldn't handle it. So he took the money and ran, probably telling himself he'd come back for you once he'd figured everything out. Vincent's voice hardened. "But Marco's been running his whole life. He won't stop now. Do you think he knows about the baby?" "No. If he knew, he would have made contact by now. Marco might be a coward, but he's not completely heartless. A child would bring him back, even if it meant facing the consequences of what he's done." Vincent moved closer, his voice softening. "Which is why we need to be careful about how we handle the next few months. If Marco finds out about your daughter, if he comes back before we've resolved the situation with the Castellanos, everything becomes more complicated." I pressed my hand against my growing bump, a gesture that had become instinctive. "You think he'd try to take her? Take us away?" "I think Marco would make promises he couldn't keep, and put you both in danger trying to be the hero of his own story." Vincent reached out, hesitating for a moment before placing his hand over mine where it rested on my abdomen. "But I won't let that happen. You and this little girl are safe here. That's a promise I can keep." The touch was electric, his palm warm through the thin fabric of my dress. We stood like that for a moment too long, close enough that I could smell his cologne, could see the flecks of lighter brown in his dark eyes. Something shifted between us in that moment, a recognition of the intimacy we'd been building, of the trust that had grown despite the darkness of our circumstances. Vincent pulled his hand back first, stepping away with obvious reluctance. "You should rest. Tomorrow we need to discuss security for when the baby arrives. Medical team, nursery arrangements, all of it." I nodded, not trusting my voice to stay steady. As I headed toward my bedroom, Vincent called after me. "Vivian?" I turned back. "Yes?" "I'm glad you stayed. Glad you're letting me protect you." He paused, seeming to struggle with something. "You matter. More than you probably should." The confession echoed Gina's observation, confirming what I'd been trying not to acknowledge. Vincent Moretti was developing feelings for me that went beyond family obligation, beyond protecting his brother's child. And God help me, I was beginning to feel the same dangerous pull toward him. "Good night, Vincent," I managed, fleeing to my room before I could say something I'd regret. That night, Lying in bed with my hand on my growing belly, I acknowledged the terrifying truth I'd been avoiding. I was falling for Vincent Moretti, the man protecting me from his brother's mistakes, the dangerous guardian who made me feel safer than I'd ever felt with Marco. It was wrong on every level, complicated beyond reason, and potentially disastrous for everyone involved. But my daughter kicked beneath my palm, a reminder that sometimes the wrong choices led to the right outcomes. And as I drifted toward sleep, I allowed myself to imagine a future where Vincent's promise of protection became something more, something that looked dangerously like love. The morning sickness had finally subsided, but it had been replaced by an exhaustion that seemed to seep into my bones. At 20 weeks pregnant, my belly had rounded enough that hiding it was no longer possible. I'd abandoned my regular clothes entirely, living in the maternity wardrobe that appeared in my closet seemingly overnight. Vincent's doing, though he'd never admitted to it. I was reviewing fabric samples for the club's VIP lounge when my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me slide the screen to accept the call. Vivian. The voice on the other end was familiar in the worst way, male and carrying that particular charm that had once made my heart race. It's me. Please don't hang up. Marco. After 4 months of silence, Marco was calling. My hand trembled as I set down the fabric swatch. How did you get this number? I've been watching, waiting for the right time to reach out. His voice was strained, lacking the easy confidence I remembered. I know you're with Vincent. I know he's been protecting you. I need to see you, Vivian. I need to explain. Explain what? Anger surged through me, overriding shock. Explain how you stole $2 million and disappeared. Explain how you left me alone and pregnant. Explain why you lied about everything. Pregnant? The word came out choked. You're with your daughter, yes. I placed my free hand protectively over my belly. I'm 20 weeks along. Not that you'd know since you've been gone for 4 months. The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, I'm coming for you. For both of you. I can fix this. Vivian. I can make everything right. No. The word came out fierce, surprising me with its certainty. You can't fix this. You can't fix anything. Whatever we had died when you left. Vincent's turning you against me. He's probably told you I'm a monster, that I betrayed the family, that I don't deserve. Vincent told me the truth, I interrupted, which is more than you ever did. I know who you really are now, Marco. I know what you did. Then you know I had to leave. You know they would have killed me if I'd stayed. His voice rose with desperation. I took that money to protect us, to give us a chance at a normal life away from my family's world. I was going to come back for you, I swear. I was just waiting until it was safe. The lie was so blatant it made me laugh bitterly. You didn't know I was pregnant when you left. If you'd been planning to come back, you would have told me. You would have left me some way to contact you. Instead, you vanished like I meant nothing. That's not true. You meant everything. Marco's voice cracked. You still do. Please, Vivian. Meet with me. Let me see you, explain everything. I deserve that much. Before I could respond, strong hands took the phone from me. Vincent had appeared silently, his face dark with controlled fury. She's not meeting with you, he said into the phone, his voice deadly calm. And if you call this number again, I'll track the signal and end this game permanently. He hung up before Marco could respond, then pulled out the SIM card and snapped it in half. How long were you talking to him? 2 minutes, maybe 3. My heart was racing, adrenaline making my hands shake. I didn't tell him where I was. I know. Vincent's expression softened marginally as he took in my obvious distress. But he's smart enough to triangulate location data if the call lasted long enough. We need to move. Now. The next hour passed in controlled chaos. Vincent's security team swept through the penthouse with military efficiency, packing essential items while Marcus stood guard at the door. I was hustled into the SUV with barely enough time to grab my purse and phone, my mind still reeling from Marco's call. "Where are we going?" I asked as the vehicle pulled out of the underground parking garage. "Safe house, one of several I maintain for emergencies." Vincent was on his phone, speaking rapid Italian to someone on the other end. When he finished, he turned to me with an expression I'd learned meant bad news. The call was traced to a location in Indiana. "Marco's been closer than we thought." "Will he find us? At this safe house?" "Not easily. It's registered under shell companies, layers of paperwork that would take weeks to untangle. But Marco knows how I think. He'll figure it out eventually." Vincent's jaw tightened, which means we need to end this before he gets that chance. The safe house turned out to be a townhome in a quiet Lincoln Park neighborhood, anonymous among the rows of similar buildings. Inside, it was furnished simply but comfortably, with none of the luxury of the penthouse but all the necessary security features. Reinforced doors, blackout curtains, surveillance cameras covering every angle. Vincent's team secured the perimeter while Marcus took position in the front room. I sank onto the couch, exhaustion and stress making my head pound. The baby kicked hard, as if sensing my agitation, and I rubbed the spot absently. "Are you okay?" Vincent sat beside me, closer than he usually allowed himself. "That was a shock. I'm sorry you had to hear his voice." "I thought I'd feel something," I admitted. Anger, heartbreak, something. But mostly I just felt done, like he's a stranger I used to know. That's probably the healthiest response. Vincent's hand moved as if to comfort me, then stopped midair, uncertain. Marco has a talent for making women fall in love with the idea of him, rather than the reality. Once the illusion breaks, there's not much left to mourn. I looked at him, this dangerous man who'd protected me without question, who'd brought his family into my life, who looked at my growing belly with something approaching wonder. "You're nothing like him. You know that, right?" Vincent's laugh was soft and humorless. "I'm worse than Marco in most ways that matter. He steals money. I've ended lives. He lies about his business. I openly run criminal operations. The only difference is I'm honest about what I am." "No." I shifted to face him fully. "The difference is, you keep your promises. You protect the people you care about. You're honest even when lies would be easier." My hand moved to rest over his where it lay on the couch between us. Marco made me feel like I was going crazy, questioning my own judgment, wondering if I was being paranoid for noticing inconsistencies. "You've never done that. You've treated me like an adult capable of handling the truth." Vincent's eyes dropped to where our hands touched, his larger one warm beneath mine. "You deserve better than either of us, Vivian. Better than a world where you need safe houses and security teams. Better than choosing between a thief and a killer." "Maybe." I squeezed his hand gently. "But this is the world I'm in. And if I'm being honest, I'd rather be here with you than anywhere else with Marco." The confession hung between us, too honest, too raw. Vincent's thumb began tracing slow circles on my palm, the gesture both comforting and electric. We sat like that for a long moment, neither speaking, both aware we were crossing lines that should remain uncrossed. The baby kicked again, hard enough that Vincent must have felt it through our joined hands. His eyes widened. "Was that your niece? She's active today." Without thinking, I guided his hand to the spot where the baby was moving, pressing his palm flat against my swollen abdomen. Vincent went completely still, his breath catching as another kick landed squarely under his hand. "She's strong. Takes after her family." I watched his face, seeing wonder and something deeper. Longing, perhaps, or grief for the niece Marco should be here to feel kick. I had a name picked out, Vincent said quietly, his hand still resting on my belly. When Gina was pregnant with Antonio, before we knew he was a boy, I told her if it was a girl, she should name her Valentina, after our grandmother. She was the strongest woman I've ever known. Valentina. I tested the name, felt how it fit. Valentina Chase. Valentina Moretti, Vincent corrected softly. She's Marco's daughter. She deserves her family name, deserves the protection it offers. The implication of giving my daughter the Moretti name made my throat tight. It would tie her to this world permanently, mark her as part of a family she'd never asked to join. But Vincent was right. The name carried weight, offered protection that my own name never could. Valentina Moretti, I repeated. It's perfect. Vincent's phone buzzed, breaking the moment. He pulled his hand back reluctantly, checking the message with a frown. The Castellanos made a move. They're putting word out that they'll pay for information about Marco's pregnant girlfriend. The price just went up to $500,000. The number made me dizzy. $500,000 for information about me? For your location specifically. They're getting desperate. Vincent stood, beginning to pace. Which means we're running out of time to resolve this peacefully. Is there a peaceful resolution with people like the Castellanos? Sometimes. If the price is right. He stopped at the window, peering through a gap in the curtains. But Tomas Castellano lost his son to my family. He's not interested in money or territory anymore. He wants blood for blood. The stark reality of it settled over me. So what do? Vincent turned from the window, his expression harder than I'd seen it in weeks. We give him blood, just not yours or Valentina's. Marco? I understood immediately. You're going to use Marco to end this. If he's stupid enough to keep trying to contact you, yes. He'll surface eventually, and when he does, I'll offer him to the Castellanos as payment for leaving you alone. Vincent's voice was cold, final. It's the only way to guarantee your safety. Horror and relief warred in my chest. Marco deserved consequences for what he'd done, but handing him over to the Castellanos was a death sentence. And if he doesn't surface? If he stays hidden? Then the war continues until one side wins, or we reach another agreement. Vincent moved back to the couch, sitting close enough that our knees touched. But I won't let it touch you, Vivian. Whatever I have to do, whatever deals I have to make, you and Valentina will be protected. The vehemence in his voice, the absolute certainty, made me believe him. Vincent Moretti would move heaven and earth to keep us safe. The only question was what that protection would cost, and whether I could live with the price. I need you to promise me something, I said, taking his hand again. When this is over, when Marco's dealt with and the Castellanos are satisfied, I want you to help me leave. Take Valentina somewhere safe, somewhere away from all this violence. Vincent's expression tightened. You want to leave? I want Valentina to have a choice, to grow up knowing there's a world beyond families and blood debts and wars fought in the shadows. I squeezed his hand. Promise me you'll help me give her that. He was silent for a long moment, conflict clear on his face. Finally, he nodded. I promise. When this is over, I'll help you disappear. Set you up somewhere safe. Somewhere the Moretti name won't follow you. His voice dropped. But you should know that letting you go will be the hardest thing I've ever done. The admission made my heart clench. We were both dancing around the truth that had been growing between us. The connection that went beyond protection, beyond circumstance, into territory we'd both been trying to avoid. Vincent, I started, unsure what I was going to say. He stopped me with a gentle finger against my lips. Don't. Not yet. Let's get through this first. Let's make sure you and Valentina are safe. Then we can talk about what happens next. I nodded, though we both knew that delaying the conversation was just another form of protection. The truth was already there between us, unmistakable and terrifying. I was falling in love with Vincent Moretti, and he was falling right back. The baby kicked again, reminding us both of what was at stake. Vincent's hand moved instinctively back to my belly, and I covered it with mine. Whatever future awaited us, together or apart, we'd face it united in protecting the tiny life that had brought us together. "Valentina," Vincent said softly, speaking to my belly. "Your Uncle Vincent promises you'll always be safe, whatever it takes." And somehow, despite everything, I believed him. The next 3 weeks passed in tense anticipation. Vincent's security team tracked Marco's movements through the Midwest, always one step behind him as he moved from motel to motel, staying just ahead of both the Castellanos and us. Every few days, he'd try to call from a new number, messages getting increasingly desperate, begging me to meet him, promising he could fix everything. I never answered. Vincent had given me a new phone, untraceable, with only essential numbers programmed in. But he kept Marco's calls coming through to his own device, using them to triangulate positions, to predict patterns, to lay the trap he'd been carefully constructing. I'd reached 6 months now, my belly unmistakably pregnant. Valentina's movement strong enough that Vincent could feel her kick from across the room. Dr. Chen had moved her practice to the safe house, coming twice a week to check on us both, always accompanied by Marcus and never asking questions about the armed men stationed outside. It was during one of these visits that everything changed. Dr. Chen was measuring my fundal height when Vincent's phone rang with an unfamiliar ringtone, the alert he'd set for Marco's number. "It's him," Vincent said, showing me the screen. "He's calling from a location in Chicago, the north suburbs." "He's back," I breathed. After all this time, he came back. Vincent's expression was grim as he answered, putting the call on speaker. "Marco, let me talk to Vivian." Marco's voice was ragged, desperate. "Please, Vincent, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. You don't get to ask for anything. You stole from me, betrayed the family, put an innocent woman and your own child in danger." Vincent's voice was ice. "Give me one reason I shouldn't tell the Castellanos exactly where you are right now." "Because I have something you want. Information about their operations, locations of their safe houses, names of their suppliers, everything I learned while I was negotiating with them." A pause. "I'll give it all to you in exchange for passage out of the country. Just me. I'll leave Vivian and the baby alone. Never contact them again. I just want out." Vincent looked at me, and I saw the calculation in his eyes. This was the moment he'd been waiting for. Marco offering himself up with enough value attached that the Castellanos might accept him as payment for peace. "What kind of information?" Vincent asked. "Tomas Castellano is moving a major shipment next week. Weapons from overseas coming through the port of Chicago. 30 million in merchandise. I know the exact time, location, and which customs officials they've bribed." Marco's words tumbled out quickly. "I'll give you everything in exchange for safe passage to South America." It was a trap. It had to be. Marco wouldn't give up information like that without strings attached. But Vincent's expression suggested he was considering it anyway, weighing the value of the intel against the risk of meeting. "Where?" Vincent asked finally. "The club, tomorrow night, after closing. Just you and me. No weapons, no security. We talk like family." A bitter laugh. "Like brothers. You lost the right to call yourself my brother when you stole from me." Vincent's voice was flat. "But I'll meet you. Tomorrow, midnight, the club. Come alone, or the deal's off." He ended the call before Marco could respond, then immediately pulled up a different contact. The conversation that followed was in Italian, too rapid for me to follow, but I caught enough to understand he was calling in favors, arranging for the Castellanos to be at the club tomorrow night, setting up the final confrontation. "You're really going to do it," I said when he finished. "You're going to hand Marco over. I'm going to end this." Vincent came to sit beside me, taking my hand. "The information he's offering is real. I had it verified while we were talking, which means Marco's been playing both sides, gathering intel while negotiating for his own escape." His grip tightened. "He would have sold you to the Castellanos in a heartbeat if it meant saving himself." The thought should have hurt more than it did. But I'd mourned Marco months ago, had come to terms with the fact that the man I'd loved was a fiction. And after tomorrow, when Marco's gone and the Castellanos are satisfied, then you're free. Vincent's voice was steady, but something in his eyes betrayed deeper emotion. "I'll arrange new identities for you and Valentina. Set up accounts in whatever city you choose. Make sure you have everything you need to start over." "And us?" I asked quietly. "What about us?" Vincent was silent for a long moment. "There is no us, Vivian. There can't be. You deserve a normal life, away from this violence. Valentina deserves a chance to grow up without armed guards and panic buttons." He released my hand. "Tomorrow, after this is over, you leave. No contact, no looking back. That's the only way to keep you truly safe." The finality in his voice made my chest ache. "What if I don't want to leave?" "Then I'll make the choice for you, because He stopped, jaw clenching. "Because you've become too important. And people who are important to me have a habit of dying." The raw pain in his confession broke something in me. I turned fully to face him, taking both his hands. "Vincent Moretti, you're an idiot if you think pushing me away will keep me safer. I'm already in this life. Valentina is already a Moretti whether I leave or not. Running won't change that. It'll give you a chance. I don't want a chance if it means never seeing you again." The truth burst out before I could stop it. "I love you. I've been falling in love with you since the night you found my purse, since you sat with me during those first ultrasounds, since you've protected me and Valentina without asking for anything in return. I don't want to run from that. I don't want to lose you just when I've found you." Vincent stared at me, something like anguish in his eyes. "You don't know what you're saying. You're grateful, confused. I'm none of those things. I'm a woman who's finally seeing clearly for the first time in months." I placed his hand on my belly where Valentina was stirring. "She needs a father. Not Marco, who'd sell us for his own survival. You, the man who's already been her father in all the ways that matter. Vivian, don't push me away. Not now. Not after everything." Tears pricked my eyes. "Let me choose you. Let me choose this life, with all its complications, because it means I get to keep you in it." Vincent pulled me against him, his arms wrapping around me and my swollen belly. "You're going to regret this. When you see what I have to do tomorrow, when you understand the full extent of what I am. I already know what you are. I've always known." I looked up at him. "And I'm choosing you anyway." His kiss was gentle at first, almost tentative, as if I might break. But I kissed him back with all the pent-up emotion of the past months, all the fear and hope and desperate love that had been building. His hand tangled in my hair, pulling me closer, the kiss deepening until we were both breathless. "I love you," he whispered against my lips. "God help me. I love you both." "Then fight for us. Not just tomorrow, but every day after. Promise me." "I promise." His forehead rested against mine. "I'll fight for you, protect you, love you for as long as you'll let me." Valentina kicked between us, as if giving her approval to this strange family we were forming. Vincent laughed, the sound rough with emotion, and placed his hand over the spot where his niece, his daughter now, in all the ways that mattered, was making herself known. The next night arrived too quickly. Vincent left for the club at 11, dressed in all black. His expression settled into the cold mask I'd learned, meant he was preparing for violence. He kissed me deeply at the door, promising to be back before morning. "Be careful," I whispered against his lips. "Always." He placed a hand on my belly, speaking to Valentina. "Keep your mama safe while I'm gone, little one." Then he was gone, and Marcus was settling into his post by the door, and I was alone with my fears and my prayers that Vincent would return unharmed. The hours dragged. I tried to work on designs for the club but couldn't concentrate. Tried to sleep, but couldn't settle. Finally, at 2 a.m, my phone rang. Vincent's number. "It's done," he said without preamble. "Marco's with the Castellanos." The information he provided was accurate enough that Thomas agreed to terms. The war is over. Relief washed through me so powerfully it made me dizzy. "And you? Are you hurt?" "Minor cuts, nothing serious. I'm coming home to you." The word home made my throat tight. "I'll be waiting." He arrived 30 minutes later, looking exhausted, but alive. I met him at the door, checking him over for injuries despite his protests. There was blood on his shirt, bruises forming on his knuckles, but he was whole, safe, mine. "Tell me," I said, leading him to the couch. Vincent sank down with a heavy sigh. "Marco tried to negotiate at the last minute, offered more information in exchange for his freedom. But the Castellanos weren't interested. They took him, and whatever happens now is between them." His expression was grim. "I don't expect we'll see him again." The finality of it should have bothered me more, but I'd made peace with Marco's choices long ago. "And the peace terms?" "Complete withdrawal from contested territories, financial compensation for their losses, and your guaranteed safety in writing. The Castellanos have officially declared you and Valentina off limits." Vincent pulled out a folded document, showing me signatures and seals that meant nothing to me, but clearly carried weight in his world. "It's over, Vivian. You're free." But freedom, I'd learned, wasn't about running away. It was about choosing where you stood and who you stood with. "I'm not going anywhere. I told you that." "I know." Vincent pulled me carefully into his arms, mindful of my belly. "Which is why I had Gina prepare the spare room next to mine. If you're staying, if we're doing this, Valentina needs a proper nursery." The implication made my heart soar. "You want us to stay with you? Permanently?" "I want you to marry me." The words came out in a rush, as if he'd been holding them back for months. "I want to adopt Valentina. Give her my name officially. I want Sunday dinners with my family and our daughter. Want to wake up next to you every morning. Want to build a life that's as normal as it can be given what we are." He cupped my face gently. "I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but I've never been more certain of anything." Yes. I didn't need to think, didn't need to hesitate. Yes to all of it. Vincent's smile was brilliant, transforming his face from the hard mask I'd first known to something open and young and hopeful. He kissed me deeply, his hands gentle on my face, treating me like something precious even as passion ignited between us. "We'll do it right," he promised. "Small ceremony, just family, and then I'm retiring from the family business, going fully legitimate. I want Valentina growing up with a father who comes home safe every night." The sacrifice implicit in that promise made my eyes burn with tears. "Vincent, you don't have to." "I want to. For you, for her, for the life we're going to build together." His hand pressed against my belly. "I'm done with the darkness. It's time to choose light." Valentina kicked hard against his palm, and we both laughed through our tears. This beautiful, impossible family we were creating, born from betrayal and violence and circumstances neither of us had chosen, had somehow become everything I'd never known I wanted. 3 months later, I stood in a simple white dress that accommodated my 8-month belly, reciting vows to Vincent Moretti in front of Gina, Sal, Antonio, and a small gathering of family who'd welcomed me as one of their own. When the priest pronounced us husband and wife, Vincent's kiss was gentle but claiming, his hand resting protectively over where his daughter, legally now through adoption papers signed that morning, was preparing to enter the world. 2 weeks after that, Valentina Grace Moretti made her appearance at 3 a.m., screaming her displeasure at being evicted from her comfortable home. Vincent was there for every moment, holding my hand through contractions, cutting the cord with shaking hands, weeping openly as he held his daughter for the first time. "She's perfect," he whispered, cradling her tiny form against his chest. "Thank you, Vivian. Thank you for choosing me, for giving me this family." I watched him with our daughter, this dangerous man transformed into the gentlest father, and knew I'd made the right choice. We'd been forged in crisis, brought together by circumstances that should have destroyed us. But somehow, from Marco's betrayal and the Castellanos' threats and Vincent's need for redemption, we'd built something true and lasting. A year later, we left Chicago entirely. Vincent had sold his interests in the family businesses, established trust funds for all the nephews and nieces, and purchased a vineyard in Washington state, where we could raise Valentina away from the life he'd left behind. The Moretti name still carried weight, still offered protection when needed. But our days were filled with normal concerns: teething, first steps, preschool applications. Sometimes, late at night when Valentina was asleep and Vincent and I sat on our porch overlooking the vines, he'd pull me close and whisper his gratitude for the life we'd built, and I'd remind him that I'd chosen this, chosen him, chosen us with full knowledge of what it meant. Because love, I'd learned, wasn't about perfect circumstances or ideal timing. It was about finding someone who'd fight for you when you couldn't fight for yourself, who'd protect what mattered most, who'd choose family over power. And Vincent Moretti, for all his darkness, had chosen me and Valentina over everything else. That choice had made all the difference.